My name is Jesse Tandler. I am the Educational Program Director at Factory Farming Awareness Coalition. We are a nationwide nonprofit. We do education in the US as well as Canada on the impacts of factory farming. So I'm going to share my screen now and talk a little bit about who we are, what we actually offer, and then I will open it up to any questions and discussion. So I hope everyone can see.
Yeah, it looks good.
Great. So FFAC up until March was primarily an in-person organization. We would go into classrooms in 15 locations across the US as well as in Toronto and Vancouver. And we would offer our presentations and lessons. These days, everything is virtual. So not only do we offer our Humane Ed in the places where we were, but we've also expanded to other areas. So we can virtually reach everyone. And what factory farming awareness actually was originally created for was to make the connections between animal agriculture's impacts on the environment, on human health, workers, and on animal suffering. What we do first is try to raise awareness. So we speak to students across the country, as well as businesses, and faith-based organizations. We try to raise awareness. Through this raising awareness, many people become interested in being advocates, and then we are able to work with them to help change the menus at their institutions, so school cafeterias, cities, meetings, and we've done presentations at numerous businesses such as Google, Amazon, Genentech. And this is all to try to increase demand for plant-based food and shift people to a more sustainable, humane food system. So since 2014, FFAC has reached well over 200,000 people with our presentations. FFAC was originally started in 2010 by Katie Cantrell, who had just graduated from UC Berkeley and was looking to find an organization that made these connections with environment, with workers, with health, and with animals, couldn't find any, and decided to start these presentations herself. And in 2014, actually founded Factory Farming Awareness Coalition. Just in 2019, we reached almost 60,000 students. We also have education programs for student advocates. So these are students who join us who are interested in doing this advocacy work themselves, who are interested in the institutional change. So just this last summer, we had 75 interns, both high school and college. College students are actually paid. So it is a paid internship, and it's both a program that works on the theory end and the practice end. So students learn all about the impacts, do lots of readings and discussions. So there's a seminar that they go through, but then there is also the practical side, and they work with us on all facets of advocacy to gain experience. But what I'm here to talk to you today about most are FFAC's presentations and lessons. For several years, we just had our traditional presentations, and these are as interactive as we could possibly make them in the form of a lecture. So these are single period lectures. They're non-judgmental. We're not telling anyone what they should or shouldn't do. We are just giving information so that they can make more informed choices. All of our information is fact-based from peer-reviewed sources, and we spend time at the end not only making the connections, but also addressing solutions and the power of food choices. These presentations are tailored to different subjects. So we can reach pretty much any audience, and we customize these presentations. So we do have high demand for environmental science classes, health classes, any class that's working on social justice issues, gender studies, economics, culinary arts, media and policy. We also have Canada-specific presentations because the numbers and some of the practices in the US and Canada do differ. We also have interactive single period lessons and a video and lesson format, which I will address in a couple minutes. These are making all of these connections. So some of them will focus more on one than another. So if a teacher wants us to focus on the environmental aspects, we do. And then we don't necessarily talk as much about the others, but usually they come up in some form. Our traditional presentations try to cover each of these areas somewhat equally. So when we talk about animal suffering, we do make sure to bring up the situation with the layer hens. So the number of eggs they're laying, their lifespan, the conditions they're in, issues like debeaking. We look at the, and battery cages. We also talk about the broiler chickens, so how fast they grow, what that's like on their bodies. Again, the conditions they're kept in, labels like what is the difference between free range and cage free. We talk about, and organic, we talk about dairy cows. So we look at the life cycle of a dairy cow, the artificial insemination, what happens with the calves, whether they're male or female, and how the male calves feed into oftentimes the veal industry. We look at lactose intolerance as well. Then we talk about pigs and gestation crates, farrowing crates, what happens with the piglets. We talk about the laws around these situations as well, because many students want to know why these practices are legal. So we talk about common farming practice exemptions. We talk about ag-gag laws. And we also address fish. So a lot of times people don't recognize what's going on with the fish, that fish are in fact sentient beings. We look not only at what's going on in the oceans with the overfishing and the super trawlers, but we also address aquaculture and the conditions these fish are in, and then the environmental impacts of that as well. We talk about worker exploitation. So the physical trauma that these workers suffer, as well as the emotional trauma, why people are taking this job, who is taking this job, and what the consequences are for them. The lack of healthcare, the undocumented workers in the industry. We talk about the cleaning crews as well. And we have a section on environmental damages. One of our most popular presentations is actually the environmental presentation, where we cover all of these issues in some depth and even more. We talk about the inefficiency of the system. So, how many calories you have to feed a cow just to get 3 calories out of her, right? So 100 calories go in, 3 calories come out. And what kind of land use that ends up requiring. We talk about the water usage. So how much water it takes to make one hamburger, for example, and how that compares to plant-based options. Same with the water usage of dairy compared to plant-based milks. We have a very popular video that discusses the situation with the waste, particularly at the pig farms, what happens with all of this waste and how it affects the communities around it. We address the climate impact of factory farming. We also talk about how factory farming plays into pandemics. We even have a video now that is about a 7-minute video, and it goes over how factory farming is tied to pandemics, particularly COVID-19, and the risks for pandemics in the future. And we discuss the human health consequences. So we get into the use of antibiotics, how 80% of the antibiotics in this country go towards farmed animals, what the consequences of antibiotic overuse are. We, as well as why these antibiotics are used in the first place. We talk about cardiovascular disease, cancer risk, diabetes, athletic performance. And of course, importantly, we get into solutions. So we make sure that students know that they have choices, that they have power, that all of these things that they're learning about are things that they can actually do something about on a daily basis, and how exactly to do that. So we talk about individual food choices and the impacts individual food choices have. We talk about innovation in the industry. So all the plant-based products that are coming out, what those are like, as well as cultivated meat or clean meat, as some people call it. We also address legislation that is important to changing these issues. So things like Question 3 in Massachusetts or Prop 12 in California. And we also want to make sure that this seems doable for our audiences. So it is one of our core values is being compassionate towards everyone and being non-judgmental. So this means that we are meeting people where they're at, offering them different ways to approach this so that they can start on this journey, letting them know that there are routine-based ways of approaching going more plant-based. So that could be Meatless Mondays, a 30-day, or starting out with a 30-day vegan challenge, leaving meat off your plate 1 meal a day. There are portion-based options, impact-based options, and also just looking at it as a matter of, every time you make a choice, you get to decide what your values are, who you are, and how you're going to express that with your money, with your food choices every day. Then we have the interactive single class lesson. So this covers all of the same topics. We're not giving as much information. So sometimes teachers or professors really want us to get a lot of information in, and the presentations are good for that. But one of the best ways to learn, of course, is to actually have discussions and to co-create knowledge. To have students really think about these issues, dive into them critically, problem solve, come up with ideas and solutions themselves, and speak their opinions that maybe they wouldn't be able to speak if we were not having this discussion. We employ a lot of Socratic lines of questioning. So there are a lot of questions that we have that come up. We're not lecturing in these again, but we do try to fill in the gaps, give information where it's needed. But mostly we are challenging students to think more critically. We also have ethical dilemmas, like this one you see here. Like why does Fido get protections legally, but not Wilbur? And really looking at what is the difference between Fido and Wilbur that would justify giving one legal protections while treating the other as an object to consume. This is usually one of the questions that students end up being the most interested in, grappling with the most. What are our ethical justifications for our current food choices? Then we have a video and lesson option. So this is really good for teachers who have more than one period or who trust their students to watch the video outside of class. So the video, it's actually available on YouTube. It's called Hidden in Plain Bite. And it is a 37-minute video that covers all of the issues in an engaging format, lots of footage. I think it is important to say that what we do offer is not graphic or particularly graphic. We don't show anything bloody or gory. We don't have slaughterhouse footage. If students are interested, of course, they can go watch those things at home. But we want to make sure we're being as inclusive and sensitive as possible while still really engaging critical thinking. So after students watch this video that gives them lots of the information about the system of factory farming, then we have all kinds of discussion questions. They start out thinking about what the impacts actually are and why this issue is not talked about very often. Then we break it down into the different sections of animals, workers, environment. And then we get to solutions. So with the animals, they start thinking about what stuck out to them. Why did those things stick out to them? Usually the things that stick out are the debeaking and mutilation of the animals' bodies without pain relief, the cage confinement, the calves being taken away from the mothers. They consider how they feel and why they feel that way. And then they consider what that means for their ethics. How do they think other animals should be treated? What is ethical? What isn't ethical? And how do they draw that line? And I or whoever is speaking to the students make sure that students know that there are no right or wrong answers here. This is an exploration. However, it is the case that after exploring how their values and actions can be aligned, very few students actually end up believing that consuming animal products the way we currently do is justifiable by their own ethical standards. So that's usually an interesting investigation that students engage in. We talk about our obligation to respect our environment. What does that mean? How much should our food choices be based on the damage that they do to the environment? Then we talk about obstacles and solutions. So what does a better world look like to these students? Then what are the solutions and what are the obstacles? On a daily basis, what stops them or other people from making more sustainable, healthier, more compassionate choices, both on an individual level and on a societal level? And then what can be done about those? We also offer additional resources for teachers. So this is discussion questions, activities, research topics, lessons, and videos such as the Hidden in Plain Bite video and the pandemic video. We also have videos for many of our presentations so that if a teacher can't, for whatever reason, invite us into their classroom in person or virtually, they can share share our videos, and we are continuing to create more and more of this, especially as we are reaching more teachers in more areas and doing work virtually. So that is what FFAC in a nutshell has to offer. I definitely want to spend some time, in discussion, addressing any questions anyone has, but also if anyone has any questions about our methods. In the end, about 88%, it's actually closer to 90 these days, percent of students end up on a post-presentation survey indicating that they have the intention to reduce or eliminate their consumption of animal products. So we do know that our work seems to be having an impact, whether students are following up on those intentions or not. We're working on gathering more data for that, but we do know what their initial intentions are, and have feedback on how this Humane Ed is affecting them. So yes, please. Any thoughts or questions from the audience?
Let's take a look. I also just I wanted to ask you, sorry if I missed, if you clarified it anywhere. You don't do these presentations, they're more geared towards older age children, correct? Like high school, nothing for elementary.
Okay, yeah, good question. So we mostly work with high school and college age students. However, we do somewhat frequently present to middle school students, and we do have options for elementary school students, although we don't pursue those very avidly. We do generally want to work more with students who have more control over their food choices. It was just more of a strategic choice for us. We do think, having elementary school students think about these issues is important, but a lot of them are pretty heavy and can be a little complex and require some context. So while we do have that on offer, mostly we're working with the older students.
Yeah, we just had that just made me think about, we had a question about if there was any parent pushback or more conservative parents pushback, and I know that would probably be more of a case with the younger crowds because of the lack of self, like you said, that they can make their own food choices a little bit more, like you can go home and make your own food. So I just was wondering if that's something that you find you've experienced as well, possibly with the older kids, or if it's mainly
Yeah.
probably, if anything, with the littler ones.
So we actually haven't gotten that much. Occasionally, there is some parent pushback. It happens more in certain areas we work in, like more rural areas, for example. But most of the places we're actually speaking are cities. So on the West Coast, Vancouver, Seattle, Portland, Bay Area, Los Angeles, Orange County, San Diego, we're in Salt Lake City, Denver. In the Denver area, there does tend to be a little bit more pushback because we do speak to a lot of ranching communities. We're also in Chicago, New York, Toronto, or Orlando. So what we do find though is that most people are actually against factory farming, and that's the main thing. While particularly in the lessons, we do get into the ethical weeds of whether it's okay at all to use animals for food, or under what conditions would that be okay. For the most part, everyone, even in those communities, is not really pro factory farming. So we can get everyone on board starting there for the most part. And then no one really likes the environmental damage, right? No one really likes the animal suffering. No one wants the workers to suffer. So a lot of what we're saying really isn't very controversial. It's just information that not everyone knows or thinks about or makes the connections for. So we actually haven't gotten much pushback, even though we're speaking to tens of thousands of students every year.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a question in the Q&A. Are more schools reaching out to have FFAC in the classroom virtually now that COVID started?
So we are figuring out what the demand is looking like. It's a little complicated because a lot of teachers, if there are teachers on this call, you probably know that there's a significant amount of confusion about how to, like, just what was going on at all with the school year. And so a lot of teachers have said that they're interested, but it's going to be a little bit later in the year once they get everything settled. So we haven't had quite as many now as we had in person, but that seems to be ramping up as teachers become more comfortable and understand that we can come in to their classrooms in this virtual format. Regarding COVID itself, we've made sure that teachers know when we email them that we do discuss pandemics. We do bring in the link to factory farming, that it is important. And so we have been getting some demand around that, making sure that, we are drawing that connection and presenting on the pandemic as well, which is why we actually created the pandemic specific video that, I said it's about 7 minutes, and teachers can show it in their classrooms as a supplement to our presentations oftentimes.
Okay, great, thank you. Is there, I know having kids myself in elementary age, I know more of the farming stuff usually comes out, let's say now in October with Thanksgiving, but mainly in the springtime. Do you find that you have had more of a, like for that high schools and places like that, that there's maybe more of a demand a certain time of the year you might have with themes like that, or not really?
So so we get a lot of presentations starting in like September, October, November, and then again, February, March, April. So usually at the very beginning or very end of the semester or year, we don't get as high of a demand. Usually that's when testing is going on. We usually get like maybe like a little bump after a lot of the testing is done. But it's usually really packed into those few months in the middle of semesters, mostly.
Well, thank you so much. I think if anybody else would like to reach out to you, I know we've got some links to FFAC on our website, and people can just reach out directly on the website. I'm sure there's an email there to you or your group. And I just want to say thank you so much for coming on today to do a presentation about this and all the hard work that everybody does. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And if anyone is interested in a presentation or just wants to learn more information, you can go to our website. It's ffacoalition.org. You can request a presentation on through the website if you have students that you think might be interested in becoming interns or mentees. Then there's the option there as well. We also have citations on our website for all of our information so that teachers can see where we're getting all of our information. They can see that we're not pulling numbers from or information from PETA or specific advocacy organizations. We are getting all of our information from like I said, like peer-reviewed sources, mainstream sources. It's important. It's very important for us to, give all the latest, most updated information, and to have it as to maintain our credibility.
No, that's
So
very important.
we are
Thank
really
you for
careful
that.
about that.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. That's amazing. Thank you. Awesome. Well, I hope you have a great day further. And again, really appreciate you coming on.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.